Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We are about to start the Q&A for the Wishing Tree. Just let me get our filmmakers up onto the stage and we'll get going. All right. Perfect. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for coming to the Q&A for the Wishing Tree. We're so excited to have you all here at Filmocracy Fest, especially watching this.
Sorry, I'm saying hi to Michaela. I haven't seen her face in so long.
Sorry, there was a bell ringing. I'm not sure what that was. So yes, thank you all for joining us. We're so excited. An amazing film by Laura and Michaela, and very excited to poke you with some questions. So what we like to do right off the bat, maybe you guys can give a brief intro about yourself and your role in the film. And obviously, Laura, you have a lot of roles in this film, so you can start, and then we'll go to Michaela.
Okay, I'm Laura. I wrote the film, I acted in the film, and I directed the film. I was actually not supposed to direct the film. We did have a director on board, and he bowed out during pre-production and thought that I should direct the film. So it was terrifying, and it was a scary thought, but I had this sort of deep knowing that it was the right thing to do, even though I had never directed anything in my life. And I had some producers who were crazy enough to go along with it. So that's how we're here.
Well, I think we're really glad that you directed the film because it really turned out wonderful.
Thank you.
How about you, Michaela?
I'm Michaela, and I edited the film together with Laura, working with her, putting all the pieces together to make the final film.
Awesome. So the first question we usually like to start out with, and of course, everybody who's in the audience, you can use the Q&A function on the side. If you click on it, you can ask a question and people can vote on your questions. But the question that I'll start out with is, what was the inspiration for you, Laura, when you were writing this film? What did you hope to accomplish?
It's not a true story at all, but it is based in my struggle to have my son. And so it was sort of born of this deep well of pain inside of me. And I sort of had this idea of, I wanted to play with the idea of shame, how it's, as a woman, not being able to have a child is, it's just deeply painful. And you feel this shame that, may or may not be the right feeling, but it is what you feel. And with the other two characters, Ryan and Caleb, I wanted to bring that in as well, like two other characters dealing with totally different things, but also at the root of their issues is shame. So my feeling with that is if we can shine a light on it, it dissipates and hope can kind of prevail. So that was the thought behind it.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Like the three different characters, each in their own way, struggling with their own demons and finding resolution. Michaela, do you have any thoughts on like when you first started this project, how you thought it was going to be versus how it ended up?
Yeah, I think like for me, my first inspiration was obviously reading the script, and getting the opportunity to read it was instantly very visual. Like I could picture a lot of the things, both in terms of the film, but also in terms of the editing. And it was really interesting then receiving the footage and kind of, obviously that's going to change that vision, but there were so many things that kind of stayed true throughout from reading the script. So I think like the script was like the first piece of inspiration, and we worked on that and what we received after that to work, develop it.
That was probably one of the pieces that I really liked so much in this film was the dialogue. I felt like it was really well written and relatable and like real. So it felt like we were watching these things actually happen as opposed to like some cinematic version of life.
One of the thoughts we had just to that point, Paul, was we kind of wanted the original thought of it was to almost shoot it like a documentary, in that the camera just happened to catch these moments of life. So I'm happy you felt that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So it's such an interesting location that you were shooting, like so many beautiful shots, grand scenes. What would you say was like the hardest part of filming in that place?
We had lots of injuries on set because we were filming outdoors, and we relied entirely on natural light. So we were always racing against the clock. We had a great suggestion from our producer, Pasha, right from the get-go to shoot with 2 cameras. So we had our DP and his first AC, and then we had a second camera unit that shot simultaneously at the same time. And it really saved us time because we knew we'd be literally racing against time. But it was difficult because everything was a hike. It was a hike in with all of the, crew, the equipment, the actors. Some days we were literally in hard helmets climbing rocks to get to certain locations. Thankfully, our producer wasn't there that day, or he probably wouldn't have let us do that. So there were lots of challenges, but I knew that if we could, because it was such a low budget film, if we could pull it off, the production value would be quite spectacular. So I think it was.
Was it something like you had like a home base where you were set up and each day you would try to like hit different spots, or were you kind of like making your way into the wilderness?
We had a couple home bases. Our executive producer has a big property up there with 100 acres and a lot of trails cut through. So we used his place as a home base for quite a few days. And then we had a couple days where we went to a specific hiking location where, literally the home base was a tiny little Winnebago and a parking lot. And then we had another day with the river crossing that we were at a third location. So we tried to like shoot as much as we could at each location because you just can't afford to move that much when you're shooting an indie film.
Of course. Did you have any run-ins with wild animals while you were out there?
Just the chipmunk that made the in the track scene, which we're very grateful for his little cameo. No, we were good. We had actually the night we shot at the Wishing Tree. It was an evening shoot, and we actually had one light that night, but mainly the lanterns lit the scene, and we were surrounded by coyotes. And you can the actual coyotes you hear in the film are from set. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's scary. I actually saw this, sorry, short tangent. I saw this video where this guy is hiking and he's like, a mountain lion starts like following him, and every time he turns away, it starts charging at him. So he has to walk backwards. It's like a 6-minute long video.
No lions in Northern Ontario.
That's a relief. So what was something unexpected that maybe happened during the film while you were shooting, or something unexpected you might have learned about yourself in the process?
I broke my hand day 4 of shooting. So that was unexpected. And I think it actually served the story. Thankfully we were shooting pretty much chronologically. So when I took the day to go to Toronto to see the orthopedic surgeon and to get a cast, I made them recast it like 4 times. So it was as low profile as possible so that when we did the wrap, it didn't look like a t-shirt wrapped around a cast. And then we wrote that little scene in before the threesome scene, the beginning of that, when Ryan wraps Julia's hand. So that worked well, I think. It was something it was odd. We ended up having to stage direct this cast and Michaela didn't know that had actually happened. So it was good to get her perspective, because she was like, oh, I just thought it was part of it. I didn't notice. But on set, we were Eric, my DP, and Chantel, hair and makeup. We were literally constantly stage directing and the cast, because you didn't want it to be front and center, but you didn't want to hide it. And it was this interesting, and if you caught it at the wrong angle, it looked very bulky. So it was interesting. It's interesting.
think you did a good job hiding it. How about you, Michaela? Is there anything you... That bell again.
Sorry, that was
Um,
my phone, and I don't know how to turn it off because I am physically challenged, so I apologize.
okay, I think it's good now. Michaela, how about you? Something unexpected that you learned through the process about the film or about yourself?
I mean, obviously the broken hand is probably the thing that stands out. And like I remember receiving an email and it was like, oh, just so you know, like Laura's broken her hand. And I'm like, what? How's this gonna affect the story? And like I was probably like a week or so behind them in terms of receiving footage. So it wasn't until like a week or so later that I started seeing the stuff with the cast, so I didn't really know how they were going to solve that. So that was interesting and like just something that we worked on. But I don't know if anything like unexpected really happened, but we spent a lot of time working on the structure of the film and like in terms of like the way that we were intercutting and using the flashbacks, and we have all of these different timelines and stories at the same time, and it was really interesting. We spent a lot more time reworking that and changing it from the script than maybe I had originally thought, because the script was it was working so well in terms of the structure and the way that was kind of going back and forth. But you know, once you get into the edit suite, those things aren't working as well anymore, or you have different priorities. So it was really interesting. Yeah, just like the way that we reworked and found a different way to tell the story. It was hopefully the best way to tell the story.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it's probably one of the better ones at the festival. I'm not on a jury, so I can say that. But, I don't know. It caused a lot of like introspection in myself. I felt like a lot of the questions that I have as I get older, are the same, topics that are covered in the film. And yeah, I really like these types of films. So there's a couple questions in the chat that people are asking, even though I told them to use the Q&A. So Christina is asking, how did the story evolve during the edits?
Right. Well, I guess like I was saying, like a lot of it was, we were exploring a lot. Like the first assembly that I showed Laura was very much true to the script, just because I kind of wanted her to see, the film that she had written and what they had filmed. But then from that, I feel like we just left the script and then just kind of went with it. And we spent a lot of time trying stuff. And it was kind of like, every idea or every thought that we had, we would try. And sometimes it wouldn't necessarily be the right thing, but it would lead you somewhere else that would be the right way. So it was almost like, even though the first idea wasn't the right idea, it took us somewhere that it was worth going. So I think, yeah, just like in terms of like evolving the story, we were just constantly trying new things in terms of both the structure and what we let the characters say, and how much of the story we were telling.
And there's another question here from Danielle. I think this is directed at Laura. Was the process of writing, directing, and acting in the film cathartic, or were you too busy wearing all the hats? Beautiful work.
Yes, and yes. I would say each stage was very cathartic. Like the writing in itself was, and the first draft of this film compared to where we landed with it is a completely different film. And I'm very proud of where we landed with it. And it felt like I had expunged some of my personal grief once I sort of felt like I had that right. Then the writing or the acting was, I knew I could, the actor in me would feel another sense of relief when I was able to actually be in those situations and fully express my vision of that. And then the directing was, the directing surprised me. I loved it. And I think ignorance is bliss. I think, I don't know. I'm sure there are many different types of directors. I'm an actor primarily, so I came at it from that point of view. For me, it was always, and even working with Mick, it was always like, how does this make us feel? I don't care if it's the most beautiful shot. If all that's irrelevant. It was like, what's the feeling we have? And when you're editing a film, you lose, Michaela gave me great advice in the beginning. She said, write down the moments where you feel, because we're going to see this and we're going to work it so much that you're not going to feel it at the end of the day. And we want to remember those moments. And that was great advice, because that was my guiding voice in a way, and that I didn't have experience to lean on. So all I had was my intuition. And I think that intuition came from being an actor, really.
Did you have any directing experience prior to this, like shorts or like?
No, I hadn't directed I hadn't even directed a theater scene. No, nothing. But it was
amazing.
It was, I think, I don't know. I think ignorance is bliss, because what it forced me to do is, I'm a collaborator to begin with, but I knew I had to first and foremost cast the right people, because that was going to make my job way easy. And so I was fortunate enough to have an amazing cast who, they were just fantastic. So at that, check. And I knew that. And I fought a little bit with my producer at the beginning. So he was like, well, what are you looking for? And I was like, I just know when I feel it, and he couldn't quite wrap his head around that. But I knew that would get our days, and I knew that would make our film. And then I leaned heavily on my DP. He was amazing. And so he and I had the privilege of spending, 2.5 weeks together before we stepped foot on set, so he could get inside my brain. And so I trusted him enough when we were on set that when I had really tough scenes, I could say, Eric, I need you to keep everyone away, and I need to just be an actor in this moment, and he knew exactly how to execute. So, I don't know, I do it again, but I do it the same way. Highly amazing people, collaborating.
Do you feel like you have the directing bug now? Like you want to direct more, or you're pretty content going back to acting as your primary? I think there's a part of me that's always going to be a performer and an actor for hire, but I know without a doubt that I am almost first and foremost a storyteller, and I will tell stories, and I will probably, write and direct and act in them for now. Yeah. Maybe not forever, because it's a lot of work, but for now, while I have the energy. One of the things I hear very often from actors is like they get sick of having to wait for permission to be creative.
Yeah.
And so that's what often pushes them to pursue other things like writing or directing. But like you're a triple threat now, so
I know
you can basically do anything. So there's another question here. What is your favorite scene from the film, or a scene you're most satisfied with?
I think the shack scene. I don't know if everyone can reference what that is. Where she finds the shack and she goes in and she has a flashback about her mother and the Ryan character. It's sort of his apology for being such a dick. She wasn't a walk in the park during the fight scene, but I love how that scene turned out. I think it's really beautiful.
How about you, Michaela?
Michaela didn't love that scene. Michaela didn't love that scene. We struggled with it, but I think it turned out beautifully.
I struggled with it, but we got there. But I think I don't know if I have a favorite scene, but the moments in terms of editing that I enjoyed a lot putting together where there was some more intense intercutting between the flashbacks and Julia's present. And I think it was just it was so much fun being able to have the possibility to create and play with the emotion, but getting, several aspects to play with. So actually the beginning of the shack where she kind of comes in and we're seeing her kind of see that space for the first time. And then also referencing her as her younger self at the same time. That was a lot of fun, being able to kind of find a way to level those two and kind of tell a story through that. So that was a lot of fun.
Were there any scenes that you both did not agree on? Like you wanted a scene to be in or cut and she didn't?
No.
Not that I can remember.
I have to say that the process, I understand now why people work with the same people. over and over again. Not always, but when you find the right chemistry with a key person on your team, you want to work with them again. I feel like Michaela and I almost shared the same brain, but we had different opinions, and we always respected each other's opinion, and we always were willing to try. And we're always willing to be wrong and right individually, collectively, because our guiding force was just we want to make the best film possible. And so everything else was at bay. So I don't think there was ever like a big.
I don't think so either. I think like the only thing like we would like try things. Like there'd be something that like, you know, I was maybe happy with the scene, and then Laura was like, well, I don't know if like the emotion in this, and then we would try something else, and like through doing that we'd ended up in a place that we were both happy. So it was always like we would always have discussions and we wouldn't always agree, but somehow at the end we would always come to a place where we were both happy.
It's awesome. It's awesome to find somebody that you connect with so well that you can just like keep working with them. You know, it just makes things that much easier.
Reinventing the wheel, and you have the language that you share. So
exactly. Here's a question from Christina. What have you learned during this experience? What or wouldn't you change after going through this experience and creating this film?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Sorry, I read it in a kind of haphazard way. I apologize. What have you learned during this experience? What would or wouldn't you change after going through this experience and creating this film?
I mean, I think the biggest lesson for me, going back to instinct, is just I think I had to rely on that so much this time around, because I'd never directed anything, nor had I ever led a film as a lead, like really, nor had I ever written anything. So all I had was my gut and my instinct. And I hope I'm going to do my best to cultivate that and to hold on to that, because I think perhaps as you get more experienced, you can fall into the trap of, well, this is how it's done, and this is how it's done, and these are the rules. And I was kind of like, well, fuck the rules. This is my ass entirely on the line. So I have to listen to the little voice inside of me. So I'm going to fight to hold on to that for sure. And luckily I think I had some battles, you know, with mainly my producer, whom I love, but just about certain things of scheduling. Like the actor in me was like, we have to shoot this on the, like, for example, the threesome, we had to shoot that on the last day because I needed 3 weeks with the guys to feel comfortable, for us to feel safe, for us to have the most awkward conversations ever, for us to figure out what our boundaries are, for us to feel like, you know, when you're on a film set or a theater, you feel like family after a certain amount of time. So we needed that time. So I was like, I was immovable about that, you know, and it was the right call. So hopefully I'll stay stubborn in the right ways and, you know, compromise in the ways that you can't win every fight, you know, compromise in the ways you can. And what would I don't think, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I honestly don't think I would do anything differently. I feel like I learned so much, and it was such a gift in every way that, you know, even the falls and the quote unquote failures, you know, you learn so much from them that I wouldn't change it. I don't know, Mick, would you?
No, I don't know if there's like anything that would necessarily change with this film, but there's definitely things that like you've learned from the experience that you will take with you, so you might not like do everything the same way next time. But I think like something that I really learned was really interesting for me. So this was my first feature to edit. I'd edited a lot of other stuff, but like shorter formats. So it's such a different way to like wrap your head around a story that takes a span over what ended up being 85 minutes in comparison to something like 20. And like, I remember the first assembly I had of the film, I'm like, still don't really know what the story is, because it's like such a big chunk to kind of travel and get through the journey
and
of
you're
that
like, it's
film.
too long.
So I feel, yeah. It's just as hard to like know what's working and what's not. And so like that was really, really interesting to me, like to learn to read a film and what's working and not working in terms of editing. Because what's working in one scene might be great, but once you put 3 scenes together, they're not working anymore. And it's just like a different mindset. But I think also what was really, really helpful with that was we did quite a few test screenings, because at some point you kind of lose perspective and freshness of what's working. And like, I know Julie as a character inside and out, and knowing, like what the audience is reading of her is very different. So that really helped showing the film to other people and getting their opinion and hearing what they thought.
And Mick, you had Michaela had a good line. I remember you saying, I feel like we should cut it so that it's so tight that if we took out one extra line, the whole film would fall apart, that it wouldn't make sense. So that was kind of our goal. And there were scenes like, as the actor, I felt sad to get rid of. As the director, I felt sad to get rid of, cuts. But no, I got over it, because it was always what's best for the film, and that's it in the story.
Yeah, definitely. In regards to that, I did feel like the film was extremely tight. Like it didn't have any fat, and so I guess Michaela was responsible for that.
Yeah.
Trim the fat.
Trim the fat.
Hopefully for the better.
Well, Altair is asking, who was your favorite co-star?
Oh, Altair. Altair plays Ryan in the film.
So not Altair.
So you'd have to say.
So I'm going to go with Sebastian. No. Not answering.
Abstain.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Abstain.
This is an interesting question, because there's a lot of filmmakers who come to Filmocracy Fest. We're very focused on, filmmakers and helping them develop in their careers. And for you, you're a first-time director that really hit the nail on the head. And what do you think your experience from the past felt like most contributed to you being able to just jump in like this, not even doing a short beforehand, not even filming a scene beforehand? Like something must have happened. Like you just had like a great director mentor, or you just like always kept an eye on that sort of thing?
No, I think I have had the courage to fail spectacularly in my life and not let it kill me, honestly. And I think if you're in anything creative where you have to share your work, at some point you have to, and it's terrifying. And I don't know that it'll get less terrifying. Like there was part of me that was like, I loved making this. This was so fun. I feel so much better. This is a great story. Now, I don't want anyone outside of the industry ever to see it, because I'm like, it's okay. A few people have seen it and, it's moved them, and let's just move on to the next thing. That the moment where you're stepping over the threshold is, we finished this film a week ago. So it's like just thrown into the fire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a little terrifying. But I think in my life, I've had a lot of failure. And I think it hasn't killed me. And I think I would say the most important thing for me, I can speak for myself, is to be extremely, extremely passionate about the story you're telling, because you're going to have so many challenges, some that seem insurmountable, and you're going to have to figure them out. And it's a long process, and it's exhausting, and it's tiring, and it beats the shit out of you at times, and it's amazing. But if you don't have that like burning passion, if that fades, I think this would become like a job, like a job, and that's not why any of us do this. So I've done things before that I have not been super passionate about, and it's become a chore, and then I've like fallen flat on my face and got back up. So I was very committed, if I was going to do this, that it was a story that I needed to tell, not just for me, but that I believed could inspire hope in other people, and could heal in some sort of way. And that keeps you going, because then it's not about you.
It's amazing.
Was the question, but
I mean, it may be premature to be talking about this, but what's next? You know,
Oh
like,
boy.
are you going to focus on, just like short term, the festival run, as many like big fests as you can play, or do you already have an idea for
No,
the
I'm writing. I have an idea that I'm midway. Well, I would say I'm more than. I don't have a script, but I have the story, and it started out as a feature. But I'm thinking I want to write it as more and more as a limited series, like maybe 10 episodes, just one season, and you're done. Because I'd love to explore with the idea of having more time with characters and more time to flesh out a story. And then, you know what? If I get the doors slammed on me, I'll just make it into a feature. And that'll be fine. But it's a story that I'm very passionate about as well and feel deeply about. And I mean, I think that's my governor. I don't think I'm ever going to make a horror film. Not that there's anything wrong with horror films. It just doesn't inspire me. It's not my thing. Like, I have to feel deeply about the story, about the people, about the message. So
I don't want to pry, and of course, you're welcome to abstain from this, but can you tell us a little bit about what your upcoming story is?
I feel that this crazy world we're living in right now, where people have been locked in their homes with family, partners, alone, whatever, I started exploring the idea of what does it mean to be a soulmate? Like, does that person need to be your intimate partner? Do you need to have a sexual relationship with them? Do you not? Like, and so it started sort of floating around in my head. And so basically the story is a woman, you see her relationship with her husband. She's got a 5-year-old child. Halfway through, he dies. And you see all the problems and the beauty as well, but just the real, because I think relationships are glorified far too much. Like, they're fucking hard, right? And in particular, when we're in quarantine, they're really hard. And then the second half of the film or series is her best friend, who is sort of the straightest gay man, flies in from New York and moves in with her. And they make a decision to co-parent her child together. And you see, I really want it for people to question. I'm not sure what's better, option A with the husband or option B with the gay best friend, because it's complicated. Love is complicated. I think deep connection is super complicated. I think it's hard. You have moments of it all in the same package, but I think we put so much pressure on our partners to fill everything, and then we're always angry and disappointed. So I just wanted to sort of explore that. And if I do it well, people will be maybe confused and not know what the right thing is, and that's okay. Because I think that's life, right? It's messy.
That's it. Maybe there isn't a right thing.
Maybe you get this from here and this from there, and it's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really relevant topic. It used to be much easier back in the day because you had so many different support systems, and you had like bigger families living together, and you're more connected to your community. So you had different mechanisms that now today everything is in your partner, right? Yeah. They have to be your supporter, financial provider, or housemate, like everything.
Everything.
Your best friend.
Not fair, right? It's not fair. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to explore Michaela and I talked a lot about this. There's a film called Waves. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but they did a really good job. It's 2 acts. It's not a 3-act film. It's 2 distinct acts. And it wasn't perfect, but it was very brave in terms of how they did it. And so I want to play around with that whole concept too, where it's like, act 1 is with the husband, and then there's this moment, and then act 2, she's the connector though. Act 2 is with the best friend. So
well, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
How about you, Michaela? What's up for you next?
Well, it's funny, Laura was saying about horror films, because I'm editing a horror film right now. But no, I'm just working on different films. Like I said, this was my first feature, so it was very exciting to kind of start this different kind of chapter in my career with this film, and then just kind of going on from there and seeing what the films I get to work with, and hopefully in the future I'll get to work with Laura again.
100%.
I always wondered, is editing a horror film really scary? Because you're usually editing in a dark room. Right?
I don't know. There's definitely times where I've made myself jump.
You edit yourself.
I don't know if I like would say I'm scared, but there's definitely been times when it's got me jumping.
Cool. So we are getting towards the end of our Q&A. I think we got through a lot of the questions that people asked in the Q&A in the chat. What I like to do at the end is to just let you guys, let people know how they can keep in touch with you, follow your work, how they can support you. I'll try to type in the chat, your various social media handles or anything that you guys say, and we'll wrap it up that way.
Oh my God, I don't even know what they are. Social media. Michaela.
So is it thewishingtreemovie.com?
Yeah.
I think it's the same for Instagram, right? The Wishing Tree Movie as well, I think.
And then Tree Movie. My Instagram is just at L_Adamo. I don't even know what my Facebook is. Laura Adamo. I'm never on it, so I wouldn't know that.
Yeah, I think most of them are the Wishing Tree Movie.
You want to share your Instagram, Michaela, or Twitter?
Oh, it's just Michaela Bodin. MIKAELA BODIN.
Is that for Twitter or IG?
That's for Instagram.
All right. So you guys haven't gotten on the TikTok thing yet.
No. I think I'm too old.
Yeah. There's enough editing anyway.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the film. I know that everybody who watched it definitely enjoyed the film. And we hope that all of you enjoyed getting to know Laura and Michaela a little bit better and finding out more details about their project. So definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It'll be available on demand. And you have to rate because there is an audience award. So go do that. And thanks again.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul.
That was great.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.